Alrighty, welcome back everybody. We have a USB thumb drive repair. The client somehow karate kicked it out of the USB port here. Some pretty extreme angles with the pads or the tines of the actual USB receptacle. However, whenever we were checking this client in, we did see that none of the pads were lifted off of the actual PCB board itself, or ATM machine PCB board. There's me trying to get it in focus. This whole video, by the way, is sped up 2 to 4 times until we actually get to the actual soldering of the receptacle. Then I think I slow it down to normal speed. Yeah, so here I am just cleaning up those pads. Again, adjusting the camera, but we're cleaning up the pads, get all that old solder off of there, and also just make it a flat surface. That'll be a whole lot easier to mount back onto this board. And what we're really doing is just trying to get this thing into a workable state that it will begin to transfer information. So, yep, the board is taking the solder just fine. You can see that eyelet, that anchor point in the bottom right-hand corner where the foot of the USB receptacle would go. That was pretty well damaged, but we don't really need that. That's sometimes they tie that, yep, right there. Sometimes they tie that into ground. Sometimes they don't. So in our case, it really didn't matter. And there we go. Just make those traces a little bit nicer. And then we'll go in afterwards and just use the beeper mode on the diode mode on the multimeter, and make sure none of those tiny little connections are bridged. But what we'll do first is actually use some of the copper wick and just take up any more of the, oh, I take it back, yeah, that's right, we kind of undid the eyelets here for the USB receptacle's feet. We ended up not being able to do that. I didn't want to, the way that the receptacle was bent, I don't want to bend it back and damage the actual structure inside of there. I don't want to open up the actual receptacle mounting case. So we were lucky enough to have enough of those pins come out far enough that we'll be able to mount it just fine. And then I ended up using, as you'll see later on in the video, a USB extension cable. It's a 2.0. I should use a 3.0, but that'll help with just that insertion force. We only do it once, and then the other side of that USB extension cable will be doing the majority of the plugging in and plugging out. So at this point, the solder has been cleaned, and I think I'm going over just to clean it a little bit more, and then I think I'm kind of satisfied at this point, but I can't really tell. I'm doing a lot of these repairs now with a iPad in front of my face or an iPhone, and I can't really see too well what is actually going on. And you don't really want to use one of these guys as a microscope while you're doing it. It's got a slight little delay, so who knows what is actually going on. Yep, and here we go. We are checking all the little points. Nothing was shorted, so that's good. And then I think we do the same thing once we have the receptacle on there again. And you can see that's got a pretty crucial 45-degree bend to it. And this is a pretty heavy USB drive. I tried pushing it in with just my hands and trying to do it pretty hard, and then that's when I realized that anything harder than that, yeah, that metal may bend, but something else may crack on the inside of there. So here's an up-close shot of the two. We're going to go and clean those pins on the actual receptacle side now, yep. And we'll also move those feet out the way. So here I am moving that one that probably ripped out that eye hole initially, and then you can kind of see that the pins themselves, little dirty, little cruddy looking, but we'll clean that up, and then I'll go in there and try and just space it out a little bit better with my spudger. Yep, there we go. And then just kind of flatten them out as well. The flatter these things are and aligned they are before you put it on the board will make your life a whole lot easier. So I thought I was going to do it with the helping hands here, trying to solder them both back together, but it proved to be a little bit tough to kind of angle all this stuff. So while we get a lot of cool shots here, I ended up going with this plan instead. These little magnet board holders. These are kind of a newer thing that I've been seeing, and I thought I should try them out. So here we are. That's just kind of being held in between, kind of sandwiched between those guys. And then, yeah, we'll just kind of tack down some legs. And with soldering, you don't really need to get it perfect on the first try, especially with something like this. This is pretty cramped. This is a pretty cramped spot. I mean, my iron fits just in between that. Below it is like a row of resistors and SMD capacitors and stuff like that. So you do want to be quick, but you don't need to be perfect. And you can kind of see here, I bodged the majority, of those traces, but not a problem. If you have the proper tools, you can fix that, and it's a whole lot easier to do it this way than to sit there and painstakingly just tack on each leg one by one. So I'm putting some flux on there. The bigger the glob, the better the job, as some people would say. And that's going to allow that solder to really flow into the pins where it needs to go and go away from the places it doesn't need to go. It's a magic goop, and I don't know how it works, but it does what I need it to do. And then here I am kind of being like a indecisive cat. I don't know where I want to put my soldering iron to try and get this stuff to reflow. I think I end up tacking it from the bottom. You can just see once that heat gets there, it does a real good job of staying on the pins and everything. No, yes, so now they start to stay onto those traces. And with some more solder wick, I think we get that all taken care of. But you can now see the little bank of caps and resistors, whatever that is, right before we hit that memory chip. So looking not too bad, but I did have to pull the feet out of the way, and they're kind of just hanging there like some ears. I ideally would have wanted to keep those feet in the holes, but I don't have all day to work on this kind of stuff, so just going in slowly, doing some happy little soldering, getting it all nice and purty. And then again, once this is all taken care of, we'll go back in and test it out with the multimeter, the voltmeter, the diode mode. Just make sure nothing there really beeps or acts crazy. Here we go with a little bit more of the solder wick, and that just kind of takes a lot of that excess off. So if you just kind of dab it with that, it'll grab a lot of that sort of on the surface solder, and hopefully will leave the actual solder between the pads and the pins intact. So that's why I'm going back around again, just to make sure that whatever extra I pulled off wasn't below, and kind of just reflowing everything with that minimal amount of solder. So it's not always the best, but what I've found is that, kind of putting a lot on there first and then trying to take it away, speaking of the solder, is a whole lot easier, like I said earlier, than just trying to tack on one foot at a time. That's a whole lot more painstaking, stressful, and you usually end up breaking the thing a little bit more because you've got one tiny little foot keeping all that stress together, and you just move that thing the wrong way and snap. Now you've got a ripped pad off of your USB board. So we don't want to do that, but we do want to check our work afterwards. We have a tool that can tell us if there are any shorts, at least with our job, rather than just plugging it willy-nilly into a computer and blowing it up, or blowing up a USB port, or blowing this guy up even more than it needs to be. At this point, I think I'm looking for some 90% isopropyl alcohol, and we're going to put it on those pins, just clean it up, make it look nice. We don't want any of that hazardous goop hurting us at all. It's going to hurt our feelings, and we don't want it to do that. So we're going to do little little spurt right there. And then I got my handy dandy trusty toothbrush. And we're going to go ahead and just brush away any sort of cavities and dirt and grime and grossness. So it ends up looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy and satisfied with this job. I think it came out really nice. The customer should be very happy with the end result. I want to say, checking here, yep, we probably did pull off all of the information that was on this drive. Of course, this is something that had their whole life's career all on one tiny little stick of memory. So that's always something good to have. You know, I'm just being kidding. Definitely always back up your stuff, back it up often, and back it up in multiple places, not all in the same place. So you can see here I'm having a hard time putting the USB into focus. And even though it kind of looks like it, the pins are a little janky, nothing is shorting out, and so we get a thumbs up from the solder operator. Here we go now. I went ahead and already edited out the part where I tried to plug it in the wrong way and got you some good action of a USB drive being inserted right the first time. But behind the scenes, it it took me a while. But yeah, look at that thing. That is like what. It's like a beach chair or something. Your data is just going to flow right in. It's going to flow right in through that cable. So I guess it's a read only. If you can't write, I don't know how the electrons are going to go up and into there, but we plug it into the Mac Mini, and look at that. We got a little blinky light. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. Oh, I guess it is good. So another good job. Thank you so much.